Here we are back again. CCS Marketing. I'm Jason Crawford, the creative director, and we have Chris Lawson, our vice president here. And what do we do? Share from our experience?
It's been a long time. So we got to work with a lot of customers.
Yeah.
And you know what's crazy is that customers come to us and they're coming to us to learn, but what's crazy is that we get to learn a lot from our customers too. I mean, just from their experiences and how they handle things. So it's like a 360 learning curve. So we're teaching them and they're teaching us at the same time.
Yeah, it's funny because as you say that, we just recently had a couple of proposals and interviews that we did recently with some clients, and in those we often do a lot of educating too, just to set the expectations correctly. And one of those had a very interesting topic come up in the discussion, some questions that they asked, and I thought it kind of made sense to cover that topic in one of these so that we could share that knowledge with others. And I think it had to do, you said this best off camera, with prioritizing what's important. Mm-hmm. But the question was essentially, why a logo? Like, what's the point of spending X amount of money on branding? Why not just get something thrown together to have it? Mm-hmm. And my response to that was, I thought of a memory from when I was a kid, and we grew up poor, so we would always get these like really cheap shoes, the kind where like when you walk after a month or so, like the little parts come apart. I remember being in the 6th grade and like the shoe would talk, and I would go around like making it talk and making the girls laugh like it was talking, and I would like do voices and stuff. And my mom was like, tape it together for a little bit and then go get another pair of shoes. They were cheap, right? Right. And that's just kind of like, I always thought of shoes as something cheap. You buy a cheap pair, you wear them out, you get another pair, another cheap pair. Until I got into a sales job and I had a little bit more money when I was older, and somebody convinced me that I needed a nice pair of shoes. And I was like, oh yeah, like church shoes. And again, I thought of church shoes, but still cheap, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
And this person was like, no, like go spend $200 on a pair of shoes. And I was like, what? No way. No way, man. I've never spent more than like $20 on shoes. Like, if I can help it, that was it. But I did. And the first time I put those shoes on, it was, it's like the stars align. It was a magical experience. You like want to sleep in them, they're that good.
Right.
And it changed my thought on shoes, because your feet are really important, and what you keep on them and what you keep them in and walk around in. It can change what happens to your legs and your back and everything. It's all connected.
Absolutely. It's kinetic.
And we don't often think about the importance of it until we change something in our behaviors and we adapt. We put a little bit more investment into it, and then other things that we took for granted start to change and line up, and it changes our experience. And for me, I learned the value of kind of not taking something like that for granted. And I feel like branding and logos and telling your brand story with your online content, your marketing, really kind of fits in that place where it oftentimes gets set aside for low-hanging fruit, like, let's do this ad and run this graphic, and we spend money on this ad, get 100 customers, that was worth it. But anything else doesn't seem to be worth it, because it's money that we spent on it that we don't immediately see a return on. And that really bothers me, because some of these things are more slow and long-term, kind of building a reputation.
Right.
And it matters, but not in a way that's easy to demonstrate like low-hanging fruit is.
You're right. Yeah. How do you put a value on how much a logo should cost? Like, is your logo actually bringing in money?
Right.
Things like that. I get you.
And so that question, I think, is just the wrong question. Is your logo bringing in money? Mm-hmm. Because there's a lot of things in your business that don't bring you in money, but that are important because they reinforce it. They're necessary. Yeah.
Right.
And I just think we've kind of lost sight of how necessary it is to tell your story, to give people something iconically to live with alongside your brand and your messaging. And
Right.
we get it when it comes to companies like Nike, because they're so developed. They're so
Right.
late in the stage of recognition and iconography that it makes sense.
Yeah.
But we
But how do you do it
don't.
at the beginning phase?
Yes, you have to
Right.
plan for it. You don't get there unless you make a plan for it.
There you go. I
Yeah.
mean, I think you just hit the nail on the head right there, is that, you have to, you have to plan for where you're going to be in 5 or 10 years. And,
Right.
I don't like any aspect of business or in life. I mean, you have a financial plan for a reason. You have an insurance plan for a reason. You have a retirement plan for a reason. I mean, you need to have a branding plan to say, okay, this is where I want to be in 5 years. And these are the elements that are going to help me get there. And one of the key elements is a logo. Like, I mean, and it shouldn't be something that, you pay somebody $25 to do. I mean, I hate that, granted, I get the internet, I get, you can go online and buy anything these days.
Sure.
But, what becomes important is
there's a lot of cheap shoes out there too.
Absolutely. What becomes important is how intentional are you with where you're trying to take your brand. And that word intentional becomes so important, because everything that you do, put it like this. If you quit your job, okay, and you want to start a small business, you're putting your life savings into this. You've worked, let's say 10, 15, 20 years on the job to save the money, to do the things. Everything you should be doing at that point should be intentional, well thought out, well planned. So again, we talked about this before, surrounding yourself with the right people who can help you get there. Because I mean, it's just, a poorly executed plan, takes you nowhere. I mean, you have a lot of frustration, and what happens is, and this is what we see, where people wind up doing things 2 and 3 times, and they've paid, 2 and 3 times the amount because they were cheap. They wore that cheap pair of shoes. They got corns, and now they got to go to the foot doctor and get
It's funny that you say that, because that's literally the exact conversation that this kind of came out of. The client was talking about how they had hired somebody for this and hired somebody for that, but they weren't really happy. And I was just, man, it's tragic, because then it sets a tone for all the experiences that business owner is going to have from there on in. And we bear the weight of that. The mistrust, the lack of expertise that they experience with someone else, that just kind of gets, it's like with lawyers, you see a bad lawyer, you have a bad experience with lawyers, and you're like, man, lawyers suck. Yeah.
But I think that's where in our business, I mean, a lot of people will see the end result of something that we do. But I tell people this all the time, 75% of our business is education. 25% is actually producing and delivering something. And we put a lot of emphasis on making sure that the clients are educated on, what we're doing, why we're doing it, what purpose is behind it, and truly being intentional. I mean, I think that's one thing about us, is that we're small, but everything we do is intentional.
Yeah.
It's not just, hey, let's just slap this together and put it out there. And when you think about it, I mean, there's a reason why, a company like ours has been able to last for 15 years. I mean, and I think it's just been intentional, evolving, and really trying to educate clients on what we do and how what we do impacts their business. And, some will, some won't. Some will get it, some will not. And that's okay. We can't save everyone.
Right.
But the ones that we do, what happens is we wind up having long-term clients.
Yeah.
Just because now what's happened, we've built the trust.
Yeah, it's trust.
Trust is there now. They trust that we have their best interest at hand. They trust that we're paying them more, that they're going to deliver, and that becomes the execution side of it there.
I find that there's like a parallel between investing in your brand, having your logo design, having it represent your company well, because there's a parallel between that and your social media content, like your schedule of content. And I say that because people take for granted that your logo tells a story about you. And it does. It should. It should be thought of like, I always talk to people like, your company is like a teenager going to high school, and they don't know who they are. So they're trying to figure that out along the way. And it's like, well, I'm a cool kid. Am I a cool kid that doesn't know it? Am I like a part of the chess club? Who are my people? How do I connect with them? What do I say when I meet them? Like, how do I address? All of these kinds of things matter. And so your logo is that. It's really helping you craft your image. It's helping you be memorable. It's helping you, oh, that's the kid who wears the red shoes, or that's this, you know, you become memorable for certain things. And then your social media content is very similar. It's like, oh, they always do this on Fridays, or oh, they have such great tutorials, or oh, like they always have some weird, like we have a pest control guy, like they always have some weird bug that they're showing or creeping you out. And it's like, if you want to gross your friends out, you know which social media page to go to and share some of their comment or something like that. And I think that we oftentimes only or we tend to want to spend money, like you had pointed out earlier, in ways where we have low-hanging fruit. And we kind of put on the back burner or think it's less important that we have this schedule of content that shows who we are. So if people just Google it, they're like, oh, I heard about so-and-so with that. What was that? And so they Google it, we show up, or they search it, and they're wanting to know more about the company before they hire us to come do something. There's enough information there for get a feel for who we are and what we do, what we're capable of, some projects we may have worked on, or some neighbors we may have helped with their bug control or their AC or their plumbing or whatever the company might be. And for them to be able to see something there that they can connect with, so that when they call you and ask you to do the job, you're starting from a place of trust and connection.
Absolutely. Yeah. In these conversations, you know, they're like, whenever we're speaking with a creative, they get it. Whenever we're speaking with a financial person, well, how's it going to impact my bottom line? And I think if you're a financial person today and you're required to be involved in the marketing of your business or a business, whatever the case may be. I mean, I guess my one piece of advice would be to, you know, understand that you have to be able to peel back the layers a little bit more today than you had to in the past. Meaning that if I spend $1, you know, what should my return be? I spend $1 in marketing, you know, on my logo, my branding, my content, what should my return be? Back in the day, it was a little bit easier to measure. Today, there are so many more layers to that. So the only thing I would tell people is, like, if you're a financial person, and we come across them a lot, obviously, you know, people don't have unlimited budgets and they want to know, hey, what should I expect after this? Only thing I would say to that is be willing to invest the time and understand that each one of these things that we talk about has a layer to it. The first layer is the first thing that people see, but then the second, third, fourth layers are the continual content that goes out that you get known for. You get known for things, people start to engage with you. They engage with you, they start to follow, share. All of these things might be happening before they spend $1 with you. So before it was, okay, send a salesperson out, you know, they get a sale, that's it. But there are these so many different layers that are out there these days. So that's the only thing I would tell people is, like, be willing to peel back the layers and really understand what's happening at each phase, because the buying cycle is so different today than it was, you know, years ago. And a lot of it starts with what we're talking about is your initial brand, your initial image, their initial things, that the first thing that people see, and then it moves on to those other areas.
It's like soap and deodorant. Like, there was a time when people didn't really use those. And like, you can't even imagine that now. Right?
Some celebrities still don't.
Some don't, and you can tell, like, when they get smelly and smelling and working with them, it's rough stuff, man. But like, you don't spend time thinking like, oh, how expensive or cheap is the deodorant, or I just get any cheap deodorant. Until you get an armpit rash and it hurts, or until you have a skin breakout, or this happens or that happens, or you get the cheap hair gel until your hair falls flat halfway through the day, and then you had to make that sales pitch and it didn't work because you looked like a sham. You know what I mean? And you don't think about those things as being worth it to invest in until something falls apart that's related to those things.
Absolutely.
I told that story one time about wearing socks to an interview when I was a young kid. I had this interview. And I went to the interview. I was excited about getting the job. I was fresh out of college. And I got turned down, like, right in the interview. The guy was just like, well, we're not going to go with you. And he turned me away. And I was like, you know, can I ask why before you let me go? And he was like, well, you came in here, you're not dressed for the interview, you're not even wearing socks. And I looked down and I'm like, I have socks on. There were the low rising socks where he couldn't see them, but he thought I wasn't wearing socks. And that just, boom. I could have gone home. If I hadn't asked that question, I'd have gone home, never knew that I didn't get the interview or the job just because he didn't think I wore socks. Because from where I sat, I'm wearing socks. It is what it is. But that impressed upon me that sometimes there are just things that we take for granted in what we do, and we can't always necessarily tie one for one, but it's important to do them and to be consistent.
Kinetic. Everything's kinetic. It all ties together. I mean, and that's really what it boils down to. I mean, what's my famous saying? What affects what? I mean, everything is tied. There's if you're intentional, everything will be tied together. And again, as a leader in your organization, or if you're the financial person or the marketing person, understand what your actions are, what you do, how that impacts the person coming behind you.
Yeah.
Because then you start to think in layers. You start to think differently instead of just thinking linear. You're thinking on a global scale at that point, saying, all right, I get that it's not just about me, my department, my thing, my this. It's all right. How does what I do impact the organization and all our stakeholders as a whole? So, and that's what becomes important.
So let's do this to wrap things up, because we've been going for a bit now. Let's answer that question from the beginning very simply and very straightforward, since we've waxed philosophical on it. And I think we made the impression that it is important to not take for granted the things that we take for granted, or at least to invest in them, not only regarding low-hanging fruit and things like that. Prioritization. In terms of priority, let's say you've got a budget of $5,000 and you're starting a business. Where would you put it?
I'm putting it on my branding and my content. So meaning that, I need to make sure that I have a solid foundation, good logo, good story, because again, people they're not buying what you're selling. They're buying why you're doing it. So good logo, good story behind it, and a really well thought out mission and vision statement. I mean, and you know what's crazy? Yeah. I mean, what's crazy is that people say, well, that doesn't cost $5,000. Well, it could, because these things set the foundation for you to have the success that you're looking for. Because I mean, just put it like this. You can
get a website $2,000 to $5,000 by itself.
Absolutely.
Branding and logo design can run anywhere from $25 to $2,500, depending on who you ask. You can get social media accounts set up for $50 to $5,000, depending on how deep you want the content created when you start them, and like a whole world of things that can go along with it. So I think you're right on the money. I would be even more specific and say that your brand and your logo need to be really well thought out and really explained. Like people, you need to know what the elements are, and you need to know how to turn them into a conversation. Like it needs to have something to it that allows you to use that as a way to open a door, or have a conversation, or explain the vision, or create some curiosity where other people are asking you about that, and you can take the conversation over. And that, to be well done, you're not going to be able to do that for like $500. You're going to need to spend some quality time, interview. You're going to need to get some elements really well vetted, tested, get some options, different things, go in a direction. So I would say, I think we're pretty fairly priced. So I would say that. But I would also say,
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I would also say the next most important piece is a video that explains the mission and vision, where you get to kind of be interviewed and tell the story behind the brand, because that one piece of content will get so much play and so much value over the next 5 years that it's super critical for the development of your website and development of your social media presence, because there are things you can do in the launch of those other two things that pivot off of the video. And then I would say, with whatever's left over, start your website.
There you
So
go.
however small or large your site can be based off of what's left over, start there, because a website's an organic thing and it grows as your business grows, and there's
Right.
no need to feel like you have to bite the whole elephant. You can bite off one piece and then scale and grow over time, and over the next 5 to 6 years you're going to spend $5,000 to $7,000 in developing your website. You're just not going to bite it off all at once.
Well, yeah, a good single page website with good content, good branding, good colors, and a nice video, that can go a long way.
Mm-hmm.
That can go a long way when you're first starting. So I agree with you. So,
Oh,
yeah. All right.
Well, I think that wraps it up for
All
today.
right.
Unless you have
I mean,
anything to add.
no, like I'm done. That was, there's again, we like to try to bring this, try to kind of tighten it up because there's so many elements that go into it. But no, I mean, I think that's enough, because
Cool.
we don't want people walking away like, all right, what the hell were they just talking about? I can't do any of this right now. So, my word for 2021 is digestible. We want to make sure that we're giving you enough so you can just digest it.
Yeah.
You can soak it in, understand it, and figure out, all right, I can actually do something with that versus all this fluff that I can't do anything with. So,
Right.
Yep. So that's it, man.
Cool.
Yeah.
Are we exiting stage left this time or right?
Whatever way you want to go.
Whichever way. All right, ready? 1, 2, 3.